I'm gonna try my best to keep this brief, unlike the movie. Oh, Jesus. Okay. So, I just watched Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, and I have a lot to say. First, as always, let me start with the good stuff. Holy shit, this movie was pretty. I think the performances are amazing as well. Oscar Isaac is doing an incredible job with his hand movements, his motion. The precision of every action that he does is very deliberate, I think. It is directed impeccably. I think the standout that everyone's going to point to is probably Jacob Elordi because he's doing a pretty convincing, or is a pretty convincing embodiment of what Frankenstein would be, or the monster would be like if they were just spawned into the world instantly. Mia Goth also, she'll probably get a lot of praise during this movie, rightfully so. I think the direction and the acting, Christoph Waltz kind of took me out of it a little bit, but he plays the same character and everything, so that's fine. But this movie will be praised for the direction and the acting, which comes from the direction, and how great it looks. I hope. Holy shit, were the costumes amazing. The set design, amazing. The framing of this movie was pretty stellar. It isn't the best shot Guillermo del Toro movie ever, but in terms of the aesthetic and how it represents what Mary Shelley was writing about in Frankenstein is pretty incredible. I think we were all expecting this movie to be pretty. I mean, even from the trailers, it is a striking image to behold. The use of color is amazing, especially red. I feel like Netflix, who were the producers and makers of this movie, maybe had an agenda because there was so much red in this movie, and it was used to highlight who was in control, who mattered in the scene. I feel like every piece of symbolism that Guillermo del Toro wanted you to take note of, the gloves, the necklace with the cross, all harken back to the specter that Victor Frankenstein sees in his dreams, which kind of spurs on this whole course of events. That was pretty amazing. And I feel like that's a good use of subtext and not telling the audience everything, which is something this movie can't help itself with. Everything needs to be explained. Every piece of dialogue needs to be right jammed into your face. And that has to be, I have to believe that that is the problem of the studio, because there's no way so much thought was placed into the costuming, the direction, how everything was going to look, and how everything was going to be set out. There is no way that they did not put that much thought into the actual screenplay or what was written. But it feels like that because every 2 seconds, what is on screen is being explained to you by a character or by the voiceover. I just need to go off on a tangent here. The framing device in this movie is probably one of the most distracting framing devices I've ever encountered in a movie. The first half is Victor's recollection of events, Victor Frankenstein's recollection of events. But it's not really his recollection of events, it's his whole life story. And every time there is a moment for maybe something to not be said, the voiceover feels like it has to say it. Because, again, things that are being produced nowadays are supposed to be second screen viewing. This is a Netflix movie after all. They really, really want you to know that this can be watched while you're on your phone. And that bleeds into the script all over the place. The reason that they have this framing device is so that they can tell you everything that's happening in the movie. The pacing in this movie is absolutely abhorrent. What should be a 2-hour movie, maybe even less, is stretched out for what feels like an eternity, because again, first of all, the movie feels like it has to tell you everything that's happening, but it also feels like it has to justify its framing device, which is why it has this whole somewhere just after the opening, but 20 minutes from the opening, I think. This whole first sequence with, I hate to say it, Charles Dance and explaining how Victor became the way that he is so dragged out and poor and unnecessary that you could just cut to when Victor's an adult and deliver all of this exposition within 2 minutes, maybe less, of why he feels this way, why he's doing what he's doing. The mother of Victor Frankenstein isn't even really mentioned again after she dies in the first 2 seconds. Charles Dance is hardly mentioned again. I guess Victor's father lingers throughout the whole movie because somehow Guillermo del Toro's twisted this narrative to be more of a Victor Frankenstein has daddy issues narrative. As well as that, part 2, which is painfully opened by the monster saying, "He got to tell his story. Now I will tell mine." Nosferatu looking ass. Yeah, is devoid of any of the creativity that Victor's half was. You can tell because I feel like the production quality goes down, and I know that the monster story is supposed to be a little bit more visceral, but it also slows to a crawl as it feels like it has to explain to you how the monster gained so much cognitive thinking, which really brings me to my biggest issue with the movie. I think Mary Shelley's original novel really lets you sit with the character's thoughts throughout the whole narrative. This movie just doesn't do that because, again, it has to tell you every little detail that happens. There's a bunch of different moments that I can think about. Victor Frankenstein's brother literally telling him that, "No, you're the monster." Yes, we know that. We know that Victor is the one who has done most wrong during this whole movie because he tried to play God. We know the story of Frankenstein. We're being told the story of Frankenstein here. You don't need to say that. You don't need to say that. It just took me out of it completely. I rolled my eyes at the amount of times where a character would say what they were thinking, or Guillermo del Toro would use a character to tell you how to feel. Like David Bradley's character, for example, when he dies, he's like, "You're my friend, monster Frankenstein stranger guy." Okay? Yes, we know they were friends. Okay? You don't need to tell us everything that's happening. Oh god, I'm getting more frustrated just thinking about it. Mary Shelley's writing in the original Frankenstein is obviously ahead of its time. And it's from a very feminine perspective. Guillermo del Toro takes all of that and throws a lot of masculine elements at it. It throws violence, it throws daddy issue narratives, it throws Victor's emotions to the forefront. And I think that completely misses the point of the original work. As beautiful as the visual story that is being told is, the script writing and the pacing and the narrative overall does not help. I understand that Mary Shelley's Frankenstein would be a very tough assignment. It's a book that can be endlessly studied because of how much it says. It's not even a big book. Frankenstein is a very small book, and it goes by very quickly, but this movie drags itself out for no reason. I would argue, or again, speculation, but I would argue that it's Netflix's involvement trying to make this marketable and make audiences kind of understand how or understand what the original book is trying to say without actually letting them sit with it and develop it. Just telling them how to feel about it is the biggest letdown of this movie. I might leave it there. This is my rating right here. Not much more to say, unfortunately. Again, try to keep it brief, like this movie obviously didn't. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you.